D major, number 443. And I really like this sonata because it's got this really celebratory feel. It's very exciting to play and very good for nimble fingers. And Scarlatti wrote over 600 of these sonatas. It was believed that he wrote these later on in his life, so maybe after 1735, though nobody is sure exactly when they were written. Scarlatti, of course, composed these in Spain, and he lived in the Spanish court. So I think this is really evident in the rhythms used in this piece, and you'll see lots of Spanish influence here, perhaps from Spanish folk music. So some of the ingredients used here, which are going to be really, really important. First of all, the first one would be to look at articulation. So I would definitely recommend lots of metronome work here to get this really precise coordination in rhythm between the hands. But actually this piece was written for harpsichord, maybe possibly the clavichord as well. So it might be really good to decide on a sort of formula with your pupil. So can you make the articulation consistent throughout? Decide on a rule. Now I decided in bar 7 to use a mixture of slurs and staccato, this section here. So I slurred the quavers and then chose to use a kind of flick staccato here. And try and get your pupils to decide on their articulation and use this consistently throughout. You could also practice some repeated notes. This is definitely a really prominent feature of this piece. So for example, you could get your pupil to play a D major scale and change the fingers to get this nice crisp staccato. And I'm doing a kind of flick staccato here. And I'm going to try this on each note, going in an ascending pattern here. And it's really important to keep that arm really relaxed and being really aware of the wrist here and not creating tension. So that might be really good to do that in preparation to learning this piece. So another aspect of articulation, I think, is just to keep it really, really clear. I'm not sure pedal is really needed in this piece. If at all, you may use a very slight dab occasionally, but the key here is to avoid any blurring of the harmony and just to keep this clarity of sound. One of the most prominent aspects of this piece has to be the ornamentation. So I chose to start by looking at bar 50 and those few bars there. So, and just to play it without the ornamentation. Idea of the line there. Now, I think one of the most difficult things is the sheer amount of these ornaments, and they're sort of a bit like a trill. One of the techniques that you need to think about is to keep the arm really relaxed, and so it's almost like a shimmering sort of movement. So a sort of rotation of the hand. And I would say, rather than adding all of them in, maybe create a sort of rule for your pupil when they practice, or get them to make their own. And they are only going to do the ornament on the first beat of each bar to begin with, and perhaps only the first left-hand note. So really simplify it so not to overwhelm them. Next time time, you could say, well, don't do the first ornament, perhaps do the second one. And actually, what I decided to do was change the fingering, so the first ornament would have 4 and 3. It's quite a nice loose fingering to use there. But, so to avoid too much movement, I used the 3 and the 1. And sort of alternated between the 2. So if you do this separately, it gives the pupil chance to get that pattern. So that's one idea, and gradually adding in more and more until they get the whole sequence with all those ornaments in there. The idea of ornamentation is, so it's unobtrusive. It does what the name says. It's an ornamentation, it's a decoration of the melody, not something that gets in the way. So also to just thinking about the character and the dynamics and expression, you will notice that lots of the dynamics are sort of terrace dynamics or very sudden dynamics. This could have been to do with the nature of the instrument. So, for example, Scarlatti may have had the use of stops on his harpsichord, and it can create lots of excitement. So we've got this section later on. And I would encourage your pupil to keep really close to the key in these quieter sections, just to really get that really big dynamic contrast there that's needed to make the excitement of this piece. And there's lots of chance for echoes and lots of your own interpretation here. So I'm going to finish up by playing the last part of this piece, which is just as bit as exciting as the beginning, with this celebratory descending sequence at the end.